Okay,
Thank
great.
you. And Catherine, I see we've got a bunch of people waiting. Can
Okay,
you
I'm
let
going to
them
start
in as we
bringing them
figure
on.
this out?
Okay, super.
Awesome.
Here we go.
Great.
Have fun.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, wonderful. So it's 1:00, so we're going to jump right in. Just a quick little, so welcome everybody who's here. And my view keeps changing as people come in, so I'm not sure if that's normal. This is a fairly new system for us using Google Meet. So that's just your little housekeeping notice. It is being recorded, and there will be a replay available. If anybody needs to come in and out during the session, feel free to do so. This is a sort of conversational, casual kind of a thing. And we do ask if anybody attending here today has any questions, if you want to hold out to the end, we do set aside 15 minutes at the end for some Q&A. But otherwise, the two guest speakers and I are just going to be chit-chatting. And I have some guiding questions to sort of keep us on track. So welcome, everyone. My name is Steph. I'm the founder of Clarity Web Design Studio. I started and grew my business in Nova Scotia, Canada, and then I moved in August 2025 to Lethbridge, Alberta. So I'm doing this really interesting shift. It's quite a significant shift, learning a lot, and it's kind of like starting all over, which has been really unexpected, but it's allowed for a lot of really cool things to happen, which is really great. I think that was the extent really of what I was going to say. So I'd like to give Afton Brazzoni from Scribe National a chance to introduce herself, and also Carol Cox from Speaking Your Brand. Afton, would you like to go first and just give a little intro for everybody here and anybody watching the replay?
Sure. Thank you, Steph. I'm really excited to be here. This is not the first roundtable I've done with Steph, so I think that these are always really great conversations, and it's going to be no different today. I see some friendly faces in the room as well. Hi, Millie. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I am the founder of a B2B content marketing agency called Scribe National. We do a few different things, but one of them that's especially relevant to what we're going to be talking about today is producing long-form customer stories that help our clients who are primarily working in complex technical industries build trust and drive sales through content. And the landscape has changed a lot. We're going to get into all of that today. So it's just something I'm really, really passionate about, and I look forward to digging into it more. Over to you, Carol.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Carol Cox, the owner of Speaking Your Brand. I also see some familiar faces. Hi, Wendy, Raksha, Jana. There's probably some few more that I can't see. So great to have you here. And Steph, Ashton, and I know each other from a coaching community that we were a part of way back in 2021. 2022. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it was 4 years ago. So that was quite a bit.
Yep.
So I'm excited to reconnect and to be with all of you. My company, Speaking Your Brand, we work with our clients to escape what I call the expert trap, to step into more thought leadership and visibility. Primarily that looks like public speaking, keynotes, TEDx talks, business presentations. So we work with our clients on that, and we very much enjoy it. We have online programs as well as in-person workshops and retreats that we run.
Beautiful. I'm really excited to have you guys here. And I forgot that part of my intro. So Clarity Web Design Studio, for anybody who's new to me in this call, we are a web design agency. We focus on working with women-owned businesses primarily, and usually service-based businesses across Canada and the US. And our specialty is coming into websites that have been around for a while, and the business has pivoted, or the service delivery quality level has exceeded what is being offered on the website, or the accessibility isn't there, or it's not keeping up with AI, or right? This always all of those things. So I'm really excited for this conversation because, of course, the language that people are using online has shifted a lot, right? Certainly in the last year, if not longer. And I think there is a really big difference between a story that's generated and a story that's true. So that's sort of the purpose of this conversation today, is to sort of dig into that difference and why that matters more now than maybe it ever has before, both for the people who are reading it and for search engines, Google, AI, whatever, that those things that are going to make it decide whether your site is worth surfacing and showing to somebody. So what I would love to hear is, I actually had to print this on paper because sometimes I just go old school. So when you think about a story, this is for my guest speakers. When you think about a story that actually stuck with you, something that you read or maybe something that you heard, and it really felt genuinely real, what made it land for you? And either one of you can jump in whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I would say that detail and specificity. I think that, if there was, like, especially if you think about client testimonials and client case studies and client stories, if a client has had that proverbial aha moment, so maybe it happened at a workshop that they were at that I was hosting, or on a coaching session where, as the coach, I can kind of see the light bulb go off over their head. And so something really particular, in addition to the broader arc of their journey, from the before to the after. But for me, and I think maybe this is what distinguishes it from an AI written story, is having that specificity.
Beautiful. Afton, what about you?
Yeah, I think Carol's got it. I mean, I think detail and specificity are key. I also think relatability is another one. I actually heard someone tell a story yesterday as part of a keynote speech at an in-person event that I was attending. And it was just very human. She was talking about her background as an entrepreneur and how she'd bought this bar at age 23 and she didn't know what she was doing. And then eventually it was making $1 million. And that's obviously different than the types of things than we're typically talking about in client stories. But what I do think stood out about it is just that level of humanity that she brought to it. And I think you can only get that when it's a real story. And I like what you said, Steph, a true story.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, something happened to my camera, so we're just going to ignore my white screen. I'm seeing a white screen, but I'm still here. Yeah, I think that specificity is so important. You know what? I wonder if the replay is going to have a big white screen for while I'm talking. That's so awesome. Catherine, my assistant, if you have any ideas what I can do to fix this, that would be awesome. The stories, that specificity is so, it is, I think, a really important piece when we're talking about the client stories specifically and like testimonials. I know for us, when we have something where we can show, not just to show the before and after, but when a client can talk about the difference, between the before and the after, that lands a lot harder than just saying, oh, we get really great results, or we're really great to work with, like that really vague phrase. And I will say that, Google also really likes that specificity. So that moment that you guys are talking about, I think is absolutely key. I think that a lot of us business owners have testimonials that are sitting in our inboxes, probably, or in some Google Drive or in some sort of filing cabinet, somewhere. I think most of us don't usually refer to them as stories. And I wonder, how would the two of you determine when you have the raw material for a real story versus just a nice quote?
Ooh, that's a good one. I can take that one first if you like. And Steph, by the way, I can see you actually, but it's just a frozen screen. But you've got a lovely smile, so it's a nice frozen image anyway. But yeah, so I think that for me and for us at Scribe National, oh, there you are, you're back.
Yeah.
Really, what it comes down to in an ideal world is if you can sit down and do an interview with that client. I think a testimonial is a great place to start. And by all means, if you have them, use them. But if you want to go beyond that and really tell a client story, in my view, it's an interview where questions were crafted in advance to generate, well, I shouldn't use the word generate because I know we're going to be talking about generative AI, to elicit specific responses that will help you form the proper story arc. So I think the interview is key.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Carol?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I love hosting a podcast that I've been doing for 9 years now. Episode 461 just came out this week.
Word.
I know, I can't believe it's amazing. But then I get the opportunity to bring our clients on as guests. And so then it really is a long form interview. Of course, I'm helping to give them visibility. I want them to talk about the work that they do and the talk that we created together and their bigger thought leadership message. But inevitably, we talk about them being in the Thought Leader Academy or attending one of our workshops. And so that comes out. So then I have the audio, the video, the transcript to pull from for those. And then with, say, our Thought Leader Academy graduates, they do a LinkedIn live show with us where they deliver a 10-minute version of the talk that they created with us. So so think about, for all of you listening and watching, is there a way that you can invite your clients to participate in what you're doing to give them some visibility and exposure, but then you're also getting that really great video audio content that you can use as well?
That's beautiful. And I love that it's like, as a web accessibility advocate, I love that what you're doing then captures that information in a bunch of different formats so that people can, depending on how you're going to share it, people can ingest it in whatever way is preferable to them. Because I know like video, people are always talking about how video is so great, and I hate video. It's not just because my camera just blanked out, but I don't, this is getting off topic because this is what I do, but when you're watching videos, like on people's social media and stuff, I never have the sound on. And so if your video doesn't have captions, I'm out. Like I don't even see it. I don't engage with it at all. And there's all sorts of reasons to encourage people to have a little bit of autonomy in how they're going to engage with your content. And I think what you're talking about, Carol, really, really nails that. That's awesome.
Yeah, can I just add, Steph? So the reason I started my podcast 9 years ago, because I'm an audio consumer. I actually don't ever watch any video. I don't watch YouTube videos. I'm not a video watcher at all. I love audio content. So anytime we do videos, I always strip the audio and put it on the podcast for people who also just like audio and don't like video. But then all the transcripts go on the Speaking Your Brand website on the show notes pages. And I know we're going to get into AI, but the AI chatbots love that content. And I think that's why Speaking Your Brand does really well in the chatbot recommendations, because of all that content I have. So another plug for you all listening: host a podcast, host a live show, do something to get that extra content out there.
That's super smart. And yeah, I'll make a note so I don't forget about that. But yeah, that format, I think, lends itself really well to LLMs, right? That Q&A kind of format. So that's super smart. Yeah, I think, for mine, I have noticed, like, I'll often have stuff sitting in an email. And if I'm not keeping on top of my inbox, I can miss some of those things that can then become an interview, like to sort of tease out some of the, what was actually going on for you, what was, what actually made the difference, and how are you feeling about things. It's getting that sort of, that emotional connection piece is one of those important pieces of all of this storytelling that we're talking about, right? And like I said before, the vague things, this is leading into the next question, the vague kind of praise, like saying, oh, she was so great to work with, she was so fun, she was so nice, that's not going to be relatable to anybody else. Like, that doesn't tell it anything meaningful. So you guys have talked a little bit about the interview piece. Is there something around how you're crafting your interview questions that helps you to pull that second thing out of your person that you're talking to?
I can take that one. So yes, definitely. We use a very specific and systematized interview question process at Scribe. And so we begin definitely by talking about that challenge, or sometimes not even using the word challenge, but asking them kind of what was your operating reality at the time before you started working with us. And so we'll walk through all of that. One thing we also do that actually, and I'm going to get to your point specifically, Steph, about getting those more valuable quotes rather than just oh, it was great. But there's a step in between actually the challenge and that kind of solution results area that we like to really dig into as well, which is the discovery and implementation process. So it's not just, what was the before, what's the after. It's also, how did you link those two things together? So if we think about, maybe it's your company, Steph, because we've actually done a case study for you. So, I'm asking your client things like, how did you begin the search for a service provider? What were some of the reasons why you chose Clarity? And so I find that is often missing from case studies. People will talk about the before and they'll talk about the after, but they won't talk about how they actually landed on a certain service provider, why that person was different, and how the onboarding process was. So once that's out of the way, to go to your point, I think that to avoid getting, and you'll get some of those like, oh, she was lovely, and that's fine. But what you really want to do is ask about the specific outcomes that were generated, and ideally asking about them being tied to metrics as well. Oftentimes people won't be able to give you that on the interview. They'll need to step away and come back to you in a couple of days. I will actually send them an email with an example of the types of metrics that I'm looking for so that they don't have to think about it too much. And that's how we ensure that we're getting really results-oriented quotes.
I like that. Yeah, that's great. Carol, anything you would add? Wait, sorry, hang on, let me just back up for a second. So for additional context, because I don't think, I'm sure this was mentioned in the intro, but Afton has a journalism background. So I think this interview piece is, something she can bring a really good skill set to. Carol, do you have something, like with your podcasting, I think you'd have a very similar experience in a way, right? In that ability to ask questions and go a little deeper?
Yes, I definitely have put in my 10,000 hours of interview. I'm much better now at interviewing than I was 9 years ago when I started.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, I like that. I think that's something that's, I think we have to be so careful of cognitive load, when we're doing these kinds of, trying to collect these kinds of stories. And I know for like some people who are neurospicy, the usual sort of ways of trying to collect that information just don't work for them. So then trying to come up with things that make it as easy and simple as possible for them to provide the answers. Because generally, I don't know what your experience is, but generally speaking, when we have clients that we want to turn into like stories, case studies, testimonials, whatever, they're more than happy to help. You just they need that structure. They need some kind of guideline. They need some like, what is it you're looking for? Like, like that kind of thing. And I find, and maybe the two of you find this also, but I will sometimes go into that conversation thinking that the outcome was whatever I thought it was from my perspective. And then we'll find very interesting things during the conversation that wouldn't have come up on a form, wouldn't have come up with if I just like let them go leave a review on Google, which is great too. But you don't have that ability to clear out all the distractions and really sort of focus in. And like one of our clients, she said during the process, she said, I had given up on my website before, and that wouldn't have come up, if we hadn't been having that conversation. And so that was really interesting because it brought in a whole new thing that we could talk about, and then sort of really dig into that as well. And I just loved that. So I thought that was a pretty neat thing. So when we're talking about like the AI, why don't we jump into the AI piece? Because I know there's going to be a lot of people here that are waiting for the AI talk. So just to preface this part of the conversation, this is not a really big technical jargon deep dive. Okay, this isn't going to be like a how to do AI, kind of thing. But it's really interesting because I think probably everybody on this call has had some experience with AI at this point. You're welcome to put in the chat if you haven't. But right now, AI can write a client story in 30 seconds. It seems easy, and it seems like, again, with that cognitive load thing, those of us who are service providers and wearing a lot of hats, we want to make things as easy as possible for ourselves. So when you're talking, we touched on this a little bit before, but the difference between a story that's been generated and one that is true. What would you say is the thing that manufactured storytelling is actually getting wrong, and how would you notice it?
So I have been using ChatGPT since the day it came out. So over 3 years ago, I have a tech background. And so I've been implementing AI quite a bit into the back end of what we do to provide additional value. And I have a whole companion podcast that is 100% AI generated. And I love it. And it's great. It's called Confidence.
Yeah.
It's called Confidence Speaker. Go check it out. It sounds just like me, like 5-minute bite-sized episodes. So I see so much value with AI. But I am now increasingly not using it for written content. And so my email newsletters over the past couple of years, I have used AI quite a bit. I feel like now it is, at least for me, it is so obvious when, especially like LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn comments, I can tell. I think people can tell more and more as, more and more people are using it. So here's what I would say about any content, but specifically to your question, stuff about client testimonials and client stories, I would rather have a clunky paragraph that was written by an actual human being. That's not like what I call like smoothed out by ChatGPT with these like beautifully structured sentences and everything's in the right place. I would rather have that clunky, just like from the heart, from the client, obviously like making it, flow for the reader, the person who's going to be reading it. But I'd rather have that. I teach business and marketing students at a university, and I know they use ChatGPT for their discussion posts and they don't get credit when they do, but I tell them every time, like, I would rather have just your words. Like, it's okay if it's not perfect. I want to hear from you. I don't really want to hear from ChatGPT. So that's the difference to me. Like, make it clunky again.
Yeah. Or like Millie says, those of us who can actually write, just keep writing.
Yeah, it's like for those of you who actually can write in your voice, not the average generic internet voice that ChatGPT produces.
Yeah, that's bro guy. Yeah, that's really interesting. Afton, what do you see with your work? This must be sort of a tension point for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is front and center in my work, but I think Carol said it perfectly. Like, it is extremely obvious. I mean, I edit multiple pieces of content a day as part of my job, and yeah, it's extremely obvious. It's it can come across nowadays as a bit lazy. I think readers are demanding more. I think customers are demanding more. Why should someone put in the effort to read something if you're not even going to put in the effort to write it? And with that, I'm not saying that we don't use these tools at all. I mean, we use them at my company. I have also done a lot of dabbling with my newsletters, with different things for our own marketing to use them. And so I think it would be archaic to ignore them. But yeah, I pretty much have the same thoughts on it as Carol. I think, if you're someone who's a great writer and you can put together a human story that flows really well, is compelling, and that centralizes on a key idea, have at her. If you need assistance from AI to do that, completely understandable, no problem at all. But just be very, very careful for those overused phrases that are a dime a dozen and that are like a massive red flag waving that you've used AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have tools now that are to detect AI used online. So it's like this cat and mouse kind of thing, right? Cat and mouse, is that the expression? Whatever. The interesting thing too is, there's all these different AI tools. So I think we were talking about ChatGPT. I do use those also. And I will say as far as like an editing tool, Chat any of them really, they are really good for those of us who are decent writers, but might be like a little bit like a running on voicemail message. Like we get a little like caught up in our own blah, 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 blah. And so I will say that the AI tools have been really helpful to me personally to sort of make sure that I'm keeping things on topic, kind of like I'm doing with this roundtable where I'm a little bit all over the place. But I think, there's an interesting thing too for us in our agency, because we do track stats and data. And so a big part of we want to be able to showcase the actual, what would have been, I don't know if this is going to carry on into 2026, to be honest, but what we used to sort of try to focus on was that proof point of this is the before, this is the after, this is the difference, and then have that really clear demarcation line. And I don't, honestly, this is just for me personally, I don't know if we're going to continue doing that going into this year, because even though I still feel that those stats are really important, I don't think that they have the same landing impact on a reader. I think there's so much of that kind of marketing pressure. And it's a very sort of specific marketing pressure where you're like, oh, you can get this many percentages better of the whatever. And I just don't think that lands certainly not for most of our clients, who don't really actually care about the stats. They just want to know that the website's working, and that it's bringing in actual genuine people who then create an actual genuine and authentic relationship. So I wonder if either of you have any opinions about that sort of piece, like where you think this kind of discovery, let's say, is going to go this year or the next year?
Yeah, so Steph, so here's what the thought that I had, especially with you as a web design company, is for me, if I was looking to hire you, to your point, I wouldn't really care if your clients made X amount of money because you did their website. They're probably different industry, right? It's like it's apples and oranges. What I would care about is, how nice is it to communicate with you and your team? How is the structure and the process? Do things keep moving along? Do things stay on budget and on time? That's what I would want to know. So I think it's like thinking about who is your potential client and what matters to them. So for Speaking Your Brand, our potential clients, we work with them either for 8 weeks in our Thought Leader Academy or just one day or a few days for in-person workshops. So I don't necessarily know, unless I follow up with them a year later, how many speaking engagements did they get? But oftentimes we have great testimonials from them right when we finish working with them that I want to use. What matters to our clients is, do they get the talk done that they love? And 100% we guarantee it. And we have hundreds of clients that prove that, and they want to make sure that they feel supported and that they're not like just left to do this on their own, that they do it with us. So it's more important that they know that than to know, well, after I work with Speaking Your Brand, I got 10 speaking engagements, because number one, I don't know that. Number two, I can't control that.
Yeah. I can't really verify that. That's outside of your control, right? Yeah, that's super interesting. Would you say, sorry, go ahead, Afton.
Oh no, I'll go as long as we're not going to move to another question before, because I do.
No, we're good.
If you had a follow-up for Carol, please go ahead with that. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I agree with Carol. I think that it depends on your audience. So for us, stats matter very much. Our audience is marketing managers who are trying to prove some type of ROI, and so I would say stats are very useful. I would probably encourage any client. So when I talk about this, there's twofold, right? There's the case studies that we write at Scribe National to showcase the results we've gotten our own clients. And then we actually offer case studies as a service. So it might sound a little confusing, but they're definitely important for the ones we write for ourselves. Every client that we are writing case studies for, I would also highly encourage to include stats. I do actually think they're quite important.
Yeah. Is that because of the specific, like you said, the clients that you're working with, that that's the kind of thing that they're looking for? Or would you have done that anyway?
Oftentimes, yes. But I would say that you ideally want both qualitative and quantitative results that show an outcome. And I would actually care about an increase in traffic for your client stuff. Like I would
I definitely do.
I would want to know what stats you're getting them.
Even if that continues just to be something that I'm tracking for my own little, we're doing great, but certainly because of the changes in online user behavior, over time, like even in the time that I've been doing this business, the way that types of stats that are being tracked and the way user behavior is being tracked online, and then the way people are actually actively using these online tools has changed. Like it changes every single year pretty much, right? So I think tracking, knowing what those metrics are that are important to you, and then which ones are important to your client, and then making sure that you it's like anything else that benefits from a bit of structure, because you can go down these rabbit holes. And the same with these AI tools. I don't know about you guys, but I have a number of AI tools that I use. My ChatGPT has started, I think we're going to have to break up, because it's started adding these little closing CTAs with every output. I don't know where it's coming from. It's not something that's been trained into it by myself. And it bugs me to no end, because it's just again, it's distracting. It's not what I asked it to do. It's and then I have to I feel like I'm constantly slapping it. No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. So when you're talking about using these, focusing on these outcomes, I think that really is the end goal. It's like the ultimate goal for all of us, especially those of us who are small to sort of medium businesses. We might be solopreneurs, and we might have really small teams. It's really easy to get caught up in our head, about what we think people want to know about our business or about our services. And now with this AI bombardment, there's so many mixed messages around, what should we be doing to capture referrals from AI? And I find this all very interesting. And it's going to be neat to see if we had this same conversation in another, say, 9 to 10 months to see what changes from there. So I'm pretty sure chat and I are going to break up in that time frame. But so one of the other things, so like there's the M dash, everybody's all fired up about the M dash for a while. There's what was it that one of you were saying about like how you can tell when it's been written by AI? There's a lot of different flags, and I will say, just for the record, M dash was not invented by AI, but it has sort of become one of these things that people like to poke at and go, this was not human. One of the things that we also, and there are studies around this, is LLMs, in particular, these large language models like ChatGPT and all of the rest, they tend to reproduce these archetypal patterns in storytelling, but not all of them. So the study that I was reading, it said it's really good at goal-oriented narratives, like the hero and the wise old man, but it struggles as soon as you need that human context, that psychological sort of complexity, or anything that's like a little bit ambiguous. And I think they said like the trickster kind of archetype, it really struggles with that, which I thought was super interesting because this was a recent study that I was reading. So it's really good at, it can do beginning, middle, and end, when it's writing its own sort of content for you. But it's not so good when you need to get into that emotional layering, like digging into those whys, like we were talking about with the client interviews. Character depth, forget it. AI it's a robot. It doesn't. How is it going to know if it can't be trained on that? So the human element is still super key. So are there things around that framework that you two also see in your industry with your clients?
I feel like every time I've had ChatGPT try to write a story, and I did this more a couple of years ago when I was really testing it when GPT-4 first came out and kind of putting it through its paces. And to your point, Steph, it was good at kind of like that hero's journey, classic story structure. And then even though it would add specifics to the story, like wherever the story was taking place and the particular person who was in it, and it tried to mimic emotions, because it knows, like, it's smart, right? It knows that emotions are part of our storytelling, but like it was missing that like visceral embodiment component. You could tell that it was mimicking what it would be, and versus actually, obviously it's not feeling it. But I don't know if that's going to last forever. I think the large language models are clearly getting more and more sophisticated just since January of this year. Like, they're getting better and better. They're going to be able to mimic it. At some point, you may not be able to tell. All these tells that we can now see with AI writing eventually are going to get smoothed out as the AI labs get better at training them out of these kind of predictable patterns. So I wouldn't bet that it's always going to be like this. And that's why I get back to like video content, audio content, in addition to text content, is going to help you to build trust with potential clients, because we're in a trust recession. People don't trust, and especially with AI content potentially being made up. That means that there could be websites out there probably are today, with fake AI testimonial videos that look pretty good. And eventually you won't be able to tell the difference. This is why I go back to like you as the business owner doing a LinkedIn live show, having a YouTube channel, putting that type of mix of content on your website and social media, linking back to the clients that you're showcasing to their LinkedIn profiles and their websites, because you're building this ecosystem that you can't fake. Like, it's because it's real people that you're linking to and you're bringing on. So hopefully then your potential clients will see that and then be able to distinguish you from some other competitors out there who have very sophisticated marketing engines, better marketing engines than I do, but who don't really have the actual proof, but are basically pretending that they do.
Afton, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's an excellent point. I would certainly say that a lot of those tells are going to be ironed out in the future. And so, yeah, it becomes about your whole brand, as Carol was saying, multi-format content. It also becomes about the customer experience and how you would even steward a client through the process of creating a client story, whether that's written, video, or audio, and paying really, a lot of attention just to how you bring them through that process. Like, you're essentially asking them to do a favor for you. And yes, they are getting their own visibility. And of course there's that to it, but the small things go a long way. And just, are you helping them feel prepared by sending the questions far enough in advance? Are you overwhelming them with the questions, or is it, the right amount of questions? Are you booking them for an hour, but they're insanely busy and maybe they can only do a half hour? Are you explaining to them up front where the case study is going to go, how it's going to be shared? Are you, really making them the hero of it? I know this was talked about before, or sort of just using it as a promotional piece. Like, there are a lot of ways that we as the human in the process can influence that process, even if we are using AI to some extent or more in the future, right? Like, there's that quote, people will remember how you made them feel. And so if you're asking a client to come and to champion their experience with your business, you want that to live beyond just that one case study.
I love that. So I really like that you guys are both talking about trust and that sort of building that, because we are all so skeptical online. And Charlie, we're talking about like AI generated testimonials. But, we've had fake testimonials online for fake reviews, right, for ages, like since the internet, pretty much. And so I'm not sure that like it's an interesting piece of this conversation, because I'm not sure that part is necessarily changing. The ability for AI to do all this vibe coding and create a whole bunch of fake websites, yeah, that is 100% coming. But the artificialness, like that manipulative review or testimonial, like that's something I would say we've been facing that challenge for a long time. And I know a lot of my clients are therapists and clinics, and they can't, like they're regulated. They can't solicit, certainly, client reviews and testimonials. So there's a piece as well, I think, where you have to respect, again, what are your clients looking for, but you have to respect the industry that you're in as well. So this whole thing around like generating a case study isn't going to apply to everybody, and maybe not even to everybody that's on this call, necessarily, depending on what their own industries are. But I think there's always ways to use the things that people have told you about their experience working with you to in your marketing somewhere, whether it's during a conversation or whatever. Like sometimes the website might have to live in its own little sort of bubble, I think, as far as that goes. But yeah, it's really interesting. And I think too, I would also say, because AI is the thing right now, it's a language model. It's not like, I think it's so convincing, sometimes when it's spitting out these sentences that look like fully formed sentences, and it's all sounds very, very good, and it's usually very like, you're amazing, you're thinking about this, so whatever. And what do you call it? It's what is the word that I'm looking for? Is it soporific? Is that the word?
Sycophantic.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I think it's a bit of a trap. And one of the things that I think a lot of us lose sight of is that it's averaging words. It's not actually thinking about your question. It's not taking all of it. I don't care how good your prompts are. I don't care how well you've trained your AI. It's still not another person. It's not an actual partner. It's not, I know there's agentic AI. It's better, but you have to be so conscious and intentional in the ways that you're using it and in how you are then going to take the output that it gives you. So it's this idea that it is literally not capable of creating truly original content. It's just not, because that's not what it's designed to do. It's repurposing, or not even repurposing, it's remixing, repackaging whatever bubbles to the surface when you're doing that one specific search. And it's one of the reasons that we talk about it as being like the worst possible thing for web design, because 98% of the websites online today are not accessible friendly. So great. Let's add in a bunch of fake websites that are built to the same quote unquote standard. That's going to help things a lot. So yeah, that trust piece is, I think, using AI, not unintentionally, because I think a lot of us are going to use it and make mistakes. And I certainly have. And that's fine. But it's that authenticity and that realness and that respect, I think, for your client, and to not assume that, they're bringing their own context to whatever this conversation is, with you, whether it's on your website or on your social or on your podcast or whatever. And if, like you were talking, Carol, about your AI podcast, it's an AI podcast. Like, nobody's coming there and going, I feel deceived, or, whatever. And I think that's kind of fun. And I was trying to remember when you were talking about this. I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in the day when Twitter was still new, there was a guy who made a Twitter account, and it was a bot. And every day it would post a little thing, a little tweet. And all of these people followed it and thought it was so awesome. And it was just some kid who wrote a program to make this Twitter thing. And that was ages ago. So it's just funny that we're still sort of talking about a lot of these things. I find that quite funny. So when we were talking about trust, from our perspective in the web industry, with the way that things have changed, Google and these other tools, they are increasingly looking for that. It's called EEAT, expertise. It's the whole thing. But they're looking for proof that the person behind the content has actually lived it, essentially, right? So in your experiences with your own indices, because I love how you guys, the two of you have there's this really neat intersection, I think, between the written storytelling and the audio and video kind of piece. And I wonder what you would say if I asked how this authentic storytelling connects to actually to your marketing and to your visibility.
Yeah. Go ahead, Afton.
Yeah, I think authentic storytelling is the backbone of your marketing and your visibility. So I think without it, how can we be distinct? Without it, how can we be clear about our values? And how can we then find alignment with the right clients and customers? I don't think there's any substitute for that, because it becomes really, really difficult to identify who is a good fit for your business and vice versa without that. So yeah, I think authentic storytelling is the backbone of everything, and not, trying to skip over that, I think, is a bit of a shortcut. And I would say that I do recognize every business owner is wearing a million hats, and marketing is probably not the first thing that you either want to be doing or have all the time in the world to be doing. And so if you can authentically tell your story in one format on one platform just to start, and then expand out from there once you've mastered that, I think you're in a really good place. But I think it is the skill set itself first that needs to be developed.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. So I would say, for those of you who are watching and trying to think like, what is my authentic story? It's a hard question,
I know.
I was thinking
that while Austin was talking, I was like, oh man, if I was just starting out, I'd be like, what?
Yeah. Right. What's my authentic? It's hard. It's hard to think about. And this is why I always recommend to my clients to go do podcast interviews, because you'll get asked questions, and then you'll just be like, you'll develop over time what is it that people seem to be most interested in, and then what is most related to the work that you're doing, and kind of the audience that you want to build, or the clients that you want to attract related to that. Because it's hard to just sit, for those of you who are writers and things, it might be easier for you to sit down and think about what your authentic story is. But for a lot of us, I don't know, maybe because I'm a speaker, I'm a talker. So I process by talking out loud, and as well as with writing. But back to your point, Steph, when you were talking about AI, and AI doesn't come up with original ideas, and that is 100% true. Now, again, maybe that will change down the road. It is certainly not the case today. And I have seen just over the past few months, a number of prospects come to me, do consultation calls, and they have had ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, one of them, write their talk for them, again, based on whatever prompt or content that they gave it. And I will look at it, and to someone who's not an expert in what we do, on the surface, it looks fine. Like, here's point number 1, point number 2, point number 3. But when I look at it, I can tell there's zero originality. There's nothing in there. And sure, every topic has been talked about before by some speaker somewhere. Like, you're not the first person to talk about executive leadership or storytelling in business or whatever your topic is, but you have to find what your unique angle is. And oftentimes it does relate to your journey and again, like, what soapbox you want to stand on related to your industry or what you care about and what your audience cares about. And sure, ChatGPT maybe could ask you those questions, but it doesn't know to ask you those questions. It doesn't know which threads to pull on, because when I'm working with a client on Zoom, what I'm looking for, I'm listening to what they're saying, but I'm looking for their face to change from, okay, I'm just saying this because this is what I always say about my business, like kind of monotone, to all of a sudden I ask the question and their face, their countenance, their energy changes. And they light up and they talk faster and they're passionate. And that's a signal to me that that's the direction we need to go in. And ChatGPT does not do that for people.
Yeah, I love that. That's really neat. And I wonder would you then say, like, because we haven't really talked about in-person sort of conversations at this stage, which maybe doesn't quite fit in, but it's that aspect of this being a skill set. Like, it's not something that you're going to nail right out of the gate. And I say that all the time for websites too, by the way. That piece of, you need to be able to talk about the thing and still use those critical and active listening sort of skills to secure the things that you were saying, or to have them repeated back to you in some way. Because I know sometimes, when you're talking, you're just talking and you're not really thinking about, maybe how is this landing with somebody? Like, you lose that perspective. And I don't know if anybody has experience with the in-person thing. Do you find it different, I guess is what I'm asking.
Working with clients in person versus virtual?
Yeah, or like if you're having, like, if you're talking about that ability to dig into what is their authentic piece, that authentic, whatever those threads are. Do you find it different doing it virtually or in person, or it doesn't matter?
So we can get the results either way, whether we're on Zoom virtually or we're in person. I like the in-person workshops because we can then see their whole body, because we help them with their delivery and stage presence in person, which is different than helping with their delivery Zoom. Like, we help them with their delivery virtually on Zoom, but it's different when I can see their whole body and how they move. But that's just because of our specific focus on public speaking. But if you work with clients in some type of coaching or consulting or service-based capacity, I think you can see on their face when they're lining up versus when they're getting a little bit like, nah, this is not really my thing.
Yeah, when they're checking out. Yeah. Afton, do you have anything, anything that you've noticed in that area?
Yeah, I mean, we predominantly work with people virtually, but I would say Carol mentioned this right at the top of our discussion today, specificity. So I think one thing that happens a lot with AI, whether it's client stories or any other type of content, is it will say a lot without really saying anything. And, there's this kind of time old tested principle in writing where we say show, don't tell. And so, or any storytelling, it doesn't have to just be writing. So if we're looking at what does that actually mean, show, don't tell, we can have a bunch of sort of gobbledygook coming out of AI trying to explain something about the client's experience with the service provider. Or we could just have them say, now with this veterinary note-taking technology, I can get home at 5 p.m. to have dinner with my family or something like that, right? Instead of, she was stressed, there were long hours at the office. What does it actually look like in somebody's life when a solution has been implemented? And so that comes down to just actually being able to ask really good questions, like just literally, what does this mean for you? What did this look like for you? Can you give me an example? And yeah, I just think that it's just being careful to make sure that there's substance in what is being said.
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that a lot. It's like, talking a lot, not saying anything. That is exactly it. Oh, and I was going to say too that from a user experience perspective, we often sort of say, you need to know when to stop. So maybe that's a big part of it. I think these LLMs certainly haven't learned when to stop talking. So that's kind of fun. So what about, I talked a little bit about, businesses that can't share client details online. I think there are sort of like, there's some ways around it that we would have normally used in the past where we'd say like, these would make really great FAQs. Maybe you don't have a whole client story because your industry is regulated, but maybe there are elements of this that you can bring into an FAQ and use that conversational language, try to not match, but things that it would be most likely for someone to be typing in, to their browser or their AI tool or whatever. What about if you have you ever had clients that were reluctant to share client stories? Maybe they felt that it didn't align with their own personal.
Yeah, we've had some clients who also are therapists or work in similar types of fields where they can't and would not, and I would not want them to share specific client details. So then our approach for something into their talks and presentations, because of that helps the audience to see themselves in the stories. So then I encourage them to make what I call a composite story, where it's not about a particular person, but it's just kind of a composite of what a typical client of theirs would be. And then tell your audience that it's a composite. You tell her, okay, so obviously as a therapist, like I'm not going to reveal identifying information about my patients, my clients. So I'm going to share with you kind of a composite example of what this typically looks like. And then just you've let the audience know what it is.
I lost a little bit of sound right at the end. Was that just me?
No, I lost a little bit at the end too, but I did hear probably 95% of what.
That was it. You got it.
Yeah. And I think, and I would agree completely with it. Like finance is another one of those industries too. I think there are so many ways around it. I love Carol's example. I definitely agree with that. I think even sometimes just anonymized case studies, we've done those for folks. We've just called it, a multinational insurance company instead of saying the brand. I also just think even from a customer discovery perspective to inform your entire content strategy, those things are gold. And this goes for people, even if you do have permission from a client to tell the full story in their name, that's not only where those insights should live. Like every conversation that you have with clients should actually be informing your entire content strategy and the way that you approach things and the messaging that you use for things. So it's kind of like an all day sort of everyday engine that's working for you if you're really paying attention to it. But to your point, Steph, about like if they're really hesitant or if there isn't alignment, that's not the story to tell, right? Like we never want clients to feel pressured. There's always going to be somebody else who is excited about the opportunity. And so I would just say, like, don't force it in those situations.
That's really smart. Yeah, I like that a lot. I would say too, there's a lot of, we haven't really talked about like public reviews, like Google reviews and that kind of thing. But that will be interesting to see as well over the next year, because I have noticed sometimes the testimonials that I've gotten have like a bit of a bit of an AI flow, and I go, do I really want to share that? Maybe we need to have a little conversation, a little touch base. But it's interesting because when you have those client studies where you cannot share for privacy reasons or whatever, you can't share those specific details, then utilizing a tool like a Google review or Trustpilot is not an option for you. So I think the reality is, because from an SEO and a website sort of perspective, those things can be gold. But if you cannot collect those things, move on. Like, just, that's just not going to be relevant to your business, and that's okay. If there's other things that you can do, because it is, like Carol was saying, it's not just that you're creating the composite story, but that you are being really upfront that this is a composite story, and that you're not trying to showcase it as something else, because then that's going to break that trust piece again, right? Or it'll look like they'll just think that you just made it up and added it to your website to have something there, which is also not ideal. So I love that. I think that's really great. And I think I think maybe that what you're saying after about how it's like part of the overall strategy for your client's journey, to working with and that whole experience that they have working with your business. I think it needs to be it really does need to be baked in. It's not an added step. It's not an extra piece of homework for the business owner, or it shouldn't be, because you can get so much really great insight into your own business as well as your client's perspective and context. Because I know there's certainly been things that came up with client testimonials during these interview types where I go, oh, what? Somebody else said that. That's not a good experience. I don't want that to happen. If my clients are working with me, so I need to go fix that. That's an issue for me. So yeah, client conversations are gold for sure. And then, would you encourage people, because I do think the things that clients say in their own words is like the name of the game as far as websites go. So if we were talking about, I think we've been talking mostly around like positive reviews. So would you go through the same process with a client that you didn't think had such a good experience working with your company? And I'm just curious, because I think there's pros and cons, right?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah. I think it's just for a different purpose. So I don't think that you're probably going to, if you have a strong sense that a client didn't have a good experience, I don't think that you'll probably have that be your top candidate for a public facing case study. But I absolutely think it's worth a conversation with that client just for a different purpose. And you can say that it is a research gathering interview to improve your own business and your own processes. And that doesn't ever have to be published, but they will probably care that you've taken the time to find out maybe where things went wrong and are actually wanting to use their input to rectify it. So I think that matters for sure. I just think it's two different things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's beautiful. I was curious because I think sometimes I know certainly with my clients, at least not so much in the last 2 years, but before that, there was a lot of resistance to linking Google reviews, like public or any sort of public review platform on their website, because they were worried that there was like a 3-star review or something that looked like it was less than 5-star. And we always encourage them to just link it anyway, because it makes you look more legit. If you're not it doesn't look like you've hired some company to write a bunch of fake reviews. So yeah, so that's really fun. Okay, how are we doing? So 2 o'clock, we're on the top of the hour. One more question, and then I think I had 2 questions submitted prior, and I think I don't have the chat open, so I don't know what's going on there. So Catherine, I'm sure you've been keeping track of any questions.
We have one pending question we can get to at that time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so then let's do one more question, and then maybe we'll move on to the Q&A. So both of you have been in business for a while, and you have a pretty good, solid, I think, marketing sort of structure. I was going to say arm, but that's not true. I think you have like multiple arms. It's like multiple legs of the stool, right? And I think your stools are pretty solid. And so when someone's story lands on a website versus a talk versus a podcast, does the structure need to change of the story? Or is it the same story, just in a different framework, different platform?
Well, I think the structure of the before and after, or the, where were you, why was this important to you, right, to solve this problem or fulfill this desire, or whatever it was. And then what was the process, like the beginning, middle, end, what was the process of working together? And then what was the outcome? So what did you get at the end? So I think that structure is probably similar. How you format it maybe looks different on a written testimony on the website versus a podcast interview, which is going to be probably a little bit more all over the place, versus what was the other option?
Podcast, talk, website.
Oh, and for a talk, well, yeah, generally for a talk is that it's like the client example or client case study would be like one part, like one element of the talk, and then it would be whatever is reinforcing that point that the speaker is making, related to that, would relate to that particular client case study.
Yeah.
So that you go into
with
the
that
full
topic of that talk.
Yeah, you may just pull out a few relevant pieces of it.
Yeah, nice. Afton, any suggestion there?
That's
Yeah.
what I would say too.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that's really interesting, because as far as the website goes, I would have said it might change it depending on where on the website it's going to go. Because again, it's that purpose behind it. Just like you were saying, Afton, if you're having that interview with a client, and you're pretty sure that you're probably not going to get like a really great case study out of it, but you're still going to do it because it's still super valuable. I think it's a little bit like that. It's knowing what the purpose of this conversation or this interview or this story is going to be, so that you can then use it very intentionally, wherever that is, whether it's on your client testimonials page or on your home page or in your back end, sort of workflows or whatever. So I wonder if we have time to talk a little bit about how you might use AI to help you with these things. I know we already said you don't use it to create the stories, but is there something that you have found, given its limitations, and given that I think you're both very excellent writers and speakers, and you have a lot of expertise in that crafting of the authentic story? So is there something in particular around using AI tools that you would want people here to maybe avoid or do specifically, if they're going to, because we're all going to use it. I mean, that's just the reality. So what would be the thing that would help people to use those stories, I guess, is my question.
I can speak to two quick things about that. So one thing to do is, we should be repurposing those stories as much as we can. If we've had that conversation with the client that this is going to be a public marketing piece, that is one thing I would not want to see anybody do, is put all this time and effort and have it only live on their website. So I think AI can help you here. And what you can do is, when you're prompting, is just reminding it, this is the key. There needs to be one central key idea of the story, and then asking it to, give you a few different short form pieces of content that can speak to that, explaining it to it, what the platforms are going to be, all those things. And then one thing I would say not to do, or just to be careful of, is if you're putting something like an interview transcript with a client into AI, there's, depending on the tool you're using, a couple different things. So making sure it's toggled so that it's not training itself on your data. Best case scenario would actually be stripping out the company name and the customer name from the transcript, and just, being mindful of things like that.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah, I second that for sure. That's good practices there. So a couple of ways to think about using AI, in addition to us doing our kind of graduation calls and LinkedIn Lives, which are kind of exit interviews in a way, they just happen to be public at the same time. So we have the kind of like qualitative data, but then we also send surveys both to our clients and just to my email list in general. We survey them periodically. And so then I will take all those survey responses and give it to ChatGPT or Claude and have it pull out themes. So themes, what is your biggest challenge right now? What do you need the most help with? Those types of things. And so it does a really good job of data analysis and pulling out those themes. So that can be really helpful. And then the thing that I have tried and has not worked is that I have given ChatGPT kind of like the transcripts, but again, with personal details stripped out, and asked it to write a testimonial based on what that person said about our work together. It was awful. Like, it was not at all, like, I remember the conversation because it had just happened. It was not really at all what we talked about. ChatGPT completely made up quotes, like put in quotation marks what the person had said. And so, and I could spot that because I was familiar since I was in the conversation, but someone else I had handed that off to may not have realized that.
Yeah. That is super interesting. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that you brought this up because I've had the exact same experience. I've put in transcripts and I have literally asked it, give me the best quote from this entire transcript. And it will give me a quote that the person never even said.
Yes.
And so I'm like, okay, well, thanks for nothing.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I spend more time editing the output
Yes.
than I would have if I just sat down and written the done thing right out of the gate. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I will say the interesting thing about using AI, it can be really helpful. This is again coming back to that, like, who is the person that you're talking to? You know, is what language are they expecting you to use? From a website usability perspective, you know, we usually encourage, you know, grade 8 reading comprehension max. You know, so if you're like a tech industry or you're like doing a lot of stuff with a lot of big words, we're probably going to say, hey, can you dial that back? Not because we think your customers don't get it, not necessarily because they're not looking for that, but it's that cognitive load piece again. And I have used AI with moderate success to simplify, like a block of text. But you have to be so critical. And so, like you said, that it makes things up, because you can go into a fresh thing and give it the thing and it'll make something up. And if you're not on it, you know, saying, wait, where did you get that from? What is this? And I've noticed also, this is another recent change. It had started showing me a list of references in the sidebar. And I go, oh, that's new. That's interesting. Maybe it's like Perplexity. And so I go and click on the little sidebar link and it tells me something completely different from what it put in the output. I'm like, well, so there's definitely a lot of like bugs to work out, but you have to use it, I guess, mindfully, right? You have to not assume that it's a genius. It is still a computer program and it's written by humans. And you can't just let it take it and run with it. Yeah.
And it wants to make you happy as the user. Like, right? That is its directive. It wants to make us happy. Yeah. So it's not necessarily going to push back on our bad. I remember one time I was doing a chat last year and I gave ChatGPT some business ideas and then it came back and then I gave it completely, literally the opposite that I had just given it. And it was like, again, that's an amazing idea. I'm like, no. They both cannot be amazing because they're opposite. Like, stop blowing smoke up like this.
I know, and it's fascinating too. You know, I spent a lot of time building these custom GPTs last year. I got really excited about them. I thought they were going to do these really awesome things, and fully like trained them with a bunch of content and like, you know, whatever, and had it very clear what I wanted them to be able to do. They work great on my computer, like under my user profile. I hand that over to somebody else. Their output is completely different. They give it to me, and I go, "Wait, where did that come from?" They're like, "Oh, we used your thing." You know, that's interesting. So it's that there's a level of personalization that's happening on any online tool you're using, including your website, including Google search. I don't care if you're in an incognito browser. I don't care if you're using a VPN. There is still a level of customization and personalization at play that most of us are completely unaware of, or we forget. So it's kind of like, you know, you go and you search something one time and then your social media feeds are littered with that thing. It's like that. And so these AI tools are customized to you, the specific user. Maybe there are ways around that I'm not aware of. That's entirely possible. I'm not an AI architect by any stretch, but it's definitely something that I think behooves us to try to remember. And it's a little bit like, if anybody needed an analogy, it's a little bit like you can't Google yourself, like your own business. And expect that ranking that you'll see is how your business is ranking for somebody else, because it's not the same. It's not going to be, and we have created this user behavior has been created for us, I should say, by these companies and like Google and stuff, and it's not going to change. They're giving us what they think we want. So it's just something you have to be aware of, I think, for sure. And again, it comes back to that authenticity piece, right? So that's for fun. So for the so what, so what of all of this? I think I would suggest from this conversation, I think that most of us have testimonials, client comments, certainly, sitting in places that maybe we've neglected them, or maybe we haven't invested in developing that arm of our business to really makes that like an asset to the business and to the client, because of course it's going to make them feel good, right? To sit down and have an interview. So I would love for anybody here today to go back and just check and see what you've got like in the last year or so in your inbox, and you can use the little search tools and see if there's any little nuggets, that jump out that might be worth considering whether they should be part of your marketing messaging. I think that's something that, especially if you can find like that client that I had that, is like, I've given up on my website, before this, she'd had a website for 2 decades, that kind of thing was like wow, that is a big aha moment. And I love those aha moments, when you're reading other people's content. I love that. I love hearing about that kind of thing. So from here, I think we've got a little bit of time for some Q&A. So Catherine, do you want to start with the one that was pending here? And
Yeah,
any others?
sure.
I have 2 as well.
Jenna had to hop out, but she wanted to make sure
Okay.
for the recording that she got her question out there, and it is this. She would welcome advice on overcoming her own reluctance to ask for the favor, as Afton put it, of a testimonial interview.
Oh.
Hmm.
Okay. Afton, Carol,
Yeah.
would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think the thing is that we just have to understand that our customers are always going to be our best marketers. And so I don't know that the advice is anything other than we just have to challenge ourselves to get out of our own way with that. And that even if we set, something that's realistic, we're not sitting here saying that you all have to be producing podcasts or long form case studies once a month, for instance. We're not saying that at all. If you can even say, I'm going to get one very strong client story produced, whether it's written, audio, however you're going to do it, within this year. If you've never done it before, having one within a year is way better than having 0, right? So I think it's just being realistic so that you're not overextending yourself, and also understanding that these are the best sales enablement tools you can possibly have, and you don't want to hold yourself back from doing so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jana's was one of my clients, so I'm so glad, to see her here. And so here's what I would tell you, Jana, is that I think your clients would actually be honored if you reached out to them and asked for some, a Zoom conversation or what have you to talk about their experience, what they got out of working with you, what they're hoping to do next, what's next for them. So it's as much about them really as it is about you, you as the business who provided that training, that service to them. So maybe kind of reframe it for yourself in that way, because I find that, especially with my university students, I actually have them do a reflection exercise at the end of the class. And because with adult learning, instructional design, that's actually a really key component of the learning process is to do reflection, because you kind of look back and absorb, okay, what did I learn? How am I going to use this? This is why with our clients, we have them do that in their graduation call, where they give us a little mini graduation speech that's basically a reflection piece. So they're providing closure for themselves on the experience. They're practicing what they learned with us, which is fun with their graduation speech. We're getting the testimonial from it, but then it's also cementing to them what they got out of it, which makes them better referral partners in the future because they have put 2 and 2 together. So Jana, your clients are going to be very happy to do so. And if they just don't reply, Or if they say they're busy and they don't have time, that's fine. There's plenty of other ones out there who will be happy to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, I don't know, I think for that initial, for my clients, certainly that initial sort of reach out, like 15 minutes,
Yeah.
don't book an hour. Let's get, not right away. If they want to get an hour, great. And you can keep talking, great. But don't make them feel like it's going to be a big project and a big sort of time intensive load. Yeah. I love that. I think that's really great. So I had a couple questions from Marion, I don't think she's here, but she's going to be watching the replay. I want to call them out because they're really good questions. They're not like how do I go viral or whatever, but I think they're more like about the work underneath. And so Marion, when you're watching the replay, thank you for thinking at that level. I think that's awesome. So the first question was, how can you get AI to help you be found? Explain the steps involved to do this. So I'm going to jump in here first, because I don't want this to turn into an SEO tutorial. That's not the purpose of this conversation. But there is, I think, an underlying question that I would translate a little bit. I think that what's really being asked would be more like, does the kind of authentic storytelling that we've been talking about actually help you to get found? I know what my answer to that is, and the short answer is yes. For various reasons, because we're not talking about keyword SEO the way that we used to. But in my opinion, yes, and it does help because Google rewards content that demonstrates real experience and genuine perspective. So that would be my sort of short answer. Afton, Carol, do you have anything you would add or suggest about that?
Yeah, so the AI chatbots also like kind of question and answer content, but not like FAQs and how we traditionally think of it on, say, on the bottom of a sales page, but more so for my blog content that I've been working on over the past few months and has gotten good results is I'll have a blog post, but it's a pretty detailed one, like what is the signature talk? So I'm thinking about what would someone be interested in content-wise, but what would help the AI chatbots understand how to answer that user's question, and then how to refer speaking your brand as the provider that can help them with that. So same thing like what is executive presence and why it's important, and keynote coaching, and so those types of things. So there's a particular structure that the AI chatbots like. I'm actually building an AI SEO course for the university where I teach. So I've gotten really into the weeds of this. I know way too much. So it is much more than we can answer in just a couple of minutes. I would say just start. The more regularly you can put out content on your website, the better. So like, don't worry so much about exactly what it is or how it's formatted. Just get into the regular cadence of producing some type of content that is meaningful to the work that you do and the types of people that you want to work with.
Yes. Afton? Same?
Yeah, same. Not much to add from me. One thing I do want to say is calling back to something Carol mentioned earlier in our discussion about just sort of your overall brand presence. And so in addition to everything that she just said in terms of how to sort of be found in AI search, I would also say that nowadays it's really looking at your authority online as a whole. And so even though I know I said earlier, and I do stand behind, if you can only kind of master one platform, of course, do that. But in an ideal world, if you can layer more on, then that is always best.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And I think that, that idea of thinking of it as an entity and then making sure that things are consistent. You don't have a different brand name over here and then a different name over here. Like, it's those little things that it trips people up all the time. Got to be really consistent because we're talking about robots. They don't understand, why you spelled it differently over here or added a couple of words. The other thing too, when you mentioned the content, Carol, we've actually been encouraging people to consider not posting as much on their website necessarily, depending on what their goals are and what kind of business they have. Because some of these other things, if they're also posting LinkedIn newsletters, those are public facing. People don't have to log in to find them. There's a really interesting sort of evolution of how content is being surfaced. And sometimes we actually do say, like, maybe you don't need them. You certainly don't need them in both places, but maybe, so if there are things that are feeling like a really big lift, being really specific again and intentional about where you're sharing this stuff and how you're sharing it can really make it easier, because you can say, nope, this is where I put this type of content, and this is where I'm putting this type of content. And when you're creating anything on the website, keep the code really clean. Like, don't start throwing in headings in weird places, and because at the end of the day, it has to be legible to the programs as well as to people with assistive devices and all that stuff. So Marion's other question was, how do you design and display your website to show that genuine emotional connection for your story? Again, that is also something that could get really big really fast. But so I'm going to reframe Marion's question slightly for Afton and Carol here. When a story is working on a website, what does it actually feel like to land on that page? What signals to you that this is a real person and not just like a really polished marketing brand?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the human element. So I think in the context of client stories specifically, when something like that is working on a website, I would say that there is a more editorial feel to it. It shouldn't really feel like a very polished promotional marketing piece. It is supposed to be a story. And so I think it's something that draws you in, and I think it has a natural flow. It's clear, it's easy to understand. Ideally, the reader, who is, could be anybody, but in an ideal world, it's a potential lead for your business. They can see themselves in the story. I think that's what's happening when it's working well.
Nice. Yeah. Carol?
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is an interesting question because nowadays there's AI apps like Replit, where you literally will create an entire website for you just in a matter of 10, 30 minutes, however long it takes, and you tell it what brand colors you want, and it will write all the content based on whatever your industry is and all of that. And I've experimented with this because I want to know what it's capable of doing, and it produces a very nice looking website to most people's eyes. But again, the content is very generic. So as someone coming to that website, I would immediately see okay, they're stock photos or AI generated photos. There's no specificity about where is this company located? Who are they working with? What are the things that they have been doing? Where have they been speaking? Show me pictures of the founder or the people who work there speaking at conferences and being on podcast interviews. It's those are the signals I think more and more people are going to be looking for, in contrast to these, mass-produced generic websites. So at the Speaking Your Brand website, you go on there, it's a beautifully designed website. I love it, but there's also just quirkiness to it. I have a whole page of all the time, or not all the times, but a selection of times I'm on the TV news as a political analyst. Again, real content. I have a story about studying history when I was in grad school. There's all these little things that do they directly support the lead funnel or the marketing journey? No, but they show that I'm real, my company is real, the people we work with are real.
Oh, I love that a lot, because we often find even today when I'm looking for, say if I have the first conversation with a potential partner, like a referral partner or a design partner or whatever, if I go to their website and their about page, I can't find out even if they're in the US or Canada.
Yes.
I'm not even asking you to share your personal home address. I just want to know where you are, because I want to know you're a real person, because these AI tools, they are burning out these fake sites, and they can be it's just like spam in your inbox. They can be very, very convincing. So that human element is the thing that's going to make you go, oh, I think this is a real person. Oh, look, I can easily call them, email them, fill out their forms, whatever. And then, you don't have to share, I don't know, iPhone pictures of your dog.
You could.
Right? You totally could. You can do whatever you want with your own website.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be that balance of how do we make it look professional and somewhat polished versus, your social media, which is maybe for different purposes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that idea of, because again, I think most of us now, certainly those of us who are in this kind of storytelling kind of branches in the industry, we can certainly tell when stuff is written by AI. I think most clients can. Most of the clients come to me we're just we're pretty savvy. You know, most of us have been online for a long time. We kind of know what those red flags are. We know what all the bro marketing tactics are. We know your little timer on your sign up button. I'm going to get pissed off and I'm going to leave. You know, like it's that sort of really high pressure kind of stuff. Doesn't lead to an authentic relationship.
Exactly.
So I think if you sort of maintain that as your standard, like that you're going to say, my authentic story is evolving, but right now it is this, and my client this, and then that is going to be your main focus, and then it'll evolve because that's what we do, we evolve. So that's cool. Oh, and I also just wanted to say emotional connection online on a website specifically. It's not a design style. It's the design should disappear, right? So that the story can end. I think that's sort of the thing. I think most people don't have websites where the design actually disappears. I think that would get into the specific area of the website where you're telling that story. But generally speaking, good design is one you don't notice, right? So I think that might be sort of a good finish thought. Is there anything, that was it for the questions. Catherine, did anything else come in while we were yakking?
No, I think we've answered the rest of the comments within the conversation. If anybody feels like, if anybody feels that they haven't, maybe they should speak up because we've got a couple of minutes left.
Awesome. Yeah, and I apologize, I've been ignoring the comments completely. So I'll look at those after. Meanwhile, yeah, if anybody wants to unmute and shout out, you're more than welcome to. Meanwhile, Afton and Carol, thank you. This was really fun. I really appreciate you making the time. I appreciate the time everybody has put into sitting through the live session, and anybody who watches the replay later, whether you watch it on, 2.5 times speed, like some of us like to, or in real time, it's all good. We really respect these things take time. We respect anybody who is willing to set aside the time and sort of bring really great questions like we had today, and these conversations with other women business owners, because I think women really do business differently. And I think that shows up in all of the conversations that we have, whether it's with in a peer sort of setting like this, or whether it's with our clients, or out in the community. So I love that you guys were able to join me today. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
The next step for us typically is we usually do an invite only, but a little webinar following these things. So the people that were here get invited to that. So that'll be coming up. We'll send out an email for that. It would be March 10th. And we talk about real case studies. They're not written by AI. They might be edited slightly by AI, but that's about it. But we go through like what a strategic website rebuild could look like. And we usually do a lot of the before and afters there. And then Catherine, I think, I don't know if you have the outline open, but we have Afton and Carol's websites, their LinkedIn profiles. If you're able to put those in the chat, that would be fantastic, so that people have an easy way to connect and follow up with these folks, because they're awesome.
Yeah, I will seek those out and put them in. Just 1 second here.
Cool. I could probably figure it out, but you don't want to make me do that.
Is that oh, here it is. Yep, got it.
Okay. Yeah, Afton I printed it because that's how useful that is. But I'm in a new office space today, and I didn't know what I was going to have for. Oh yeah, there they are. They're good. Perfect. Thanks for doing that. Any final comments from anybody? Feel free to shout it out.
Well, thank you so much for hosting us, Steph. I appreciate it. Great questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, I would just encourage everybody to try to have some fun with everything that we've talked about today.
Yeah, and break up a chat.
At least have a separation period.
No, there's not going to be an exit interview. There's no. We're done. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.